watches. You want to see Steve's face on that one, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I may have to come back next year.
Yeah, I know. House Bill 2053, direct primary care agreements. I believe there is a substitute on that bill.
There is, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All right, do I have a motion that we adopt the substitute and get it on board? I have a motion and a second that we adopt the substitute. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. It's adopted 2-0. Delegate Landis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the committee, you heard this legislation last year. It was reported out of this committee last year, but it is different, and it tried to address many of the concerns that were raised last year by many of the folks that unfortunately probably still have some concerns. But we've made an effort to move the issue forward. The substitute addresses concerns related that were brought to us by the insurance industry that this should not be in the insurance section of the code, but is drawn to the health section of the code. So it is now written to section 54.1. Direct primary care agreements are contractual agreements between a physician and a practice and a patient, or a physician practice and an employer. And they negotiate specific fees to be paid for preventive care or primary care. Insurance claims are not submitted for the services agreed upon within the direct primary care agreement, so it's not providing insurance. The legislation, I think, is important.
This is not insurance.
This is not
specifically
insurance.
for that care contract.
Exactly, Mr. Chairman. So the legislation is important because it clarifies that direct primary care agreements are not insurance. That's the key, and therefore should not be regulated as insurance. Now, there are a couple reasons, and I want to point out protections that we have included in the legislation addressing the concerns that were raised last year. Unfortunately, every time you squeeze a balloon, something else pops out somewhere else, and that seems to be the case with lots of legislation. But I urge you to support the legislation because of how we've addressed those issues. Direct primary care agreements can improve health outcomes and cut costs. That's an advantage of the legislation. Direct primary care agreements provide additional option to employers, especially small business employers. Direct primary care agreements do not replace insurance. It's not an attempt to basically be a replacement for health care insurance. It's an option. Indirect primary care agreements prohibit any practice from double billing. That's a protection for the consumer and for the insurer, because you cannot accomplish that related to the protections we put in the legislation. Now, the legislation does provide, as I mentioned, additional protection for patients. And again, we specified these in the legislation this year. It requires each agreement to be prominently have a disclosure that the agreements do not constitute insurance, so it's clear to those that get into the agreement, the consumer and the patient. It requires that patients be informed that they may be required to carry insurance under federal law, under the Affordable Care Act. We know that's a requirement at least now. It requires agreements to specify that primary care services the practice will provide under the agreement. In other words, whatever the doctor's agreeing to is disclosed and specified. It also makes intentional violation of the provision an act of unprofessional conduct punishable by the Board of Medicine, now that's in the health section. So, it also requires the practices to disclose that patients must pay for any services provided by the practice not specified in the agreement. In other words, they ask for something that's not in the direct primary care agreement, that's separate, and that has to be paid for separately. It places limitations on the per visit fees to protect the patient. It limits the term of covered agreements paid in advance to no more than 12 months. It requires any unearned fees paid in advance to be refunded if the patient terminates the agreement. Now, Mr. Chairman, before we finish here, I also want to point out that Virginia into compliance with a policy that is working well in many other states that have already put this in place, and at the federal level. Similar bipartisan legislation has been passed in at least 17 states, and it's actually pending in as many as 8 more. It's supported by the Virginia Academy of Family Physicians, the Medical Society of Virginia, the National Federation of Independent Business, the Northern Virginia Chamber Partnership, and MD Resource. Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to try to answer any specific questions, but I know there's some speakers that want to be here, so maybe
let's hear from the individuals who are in support of the House Bill 2053.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Hunter Jamerson, Virginia Academy of Family Physicians. Very much appreciate Delegate Landis bringing this bill forward. My members avail themselves of direct primary care agreements presently in Virginia. These work very well. Philosophically, this is no different than you contracting with any service provider today in any other industry. Physicians are free of Virginia to make these contracts, and this legislation helps preserve the ability to do so. Patients enjoy working directly with their doctor and avoiding some of the administrative hassles of health insurance at times, and this is the mechanism by which we found that works very well. So we encourage you to support the bill. I know we have some providers here to speak to their own direct primary care practices.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for having me. I'm Dr. Maura McLaughlin, and I opened a direct primary care practice in Crozet, Virginia 1 year ago. I'm a family doctor, and I made the switch into direct primary care because I realized during my 9 years of practice, more and more patients were unable to afford to come in even when they needed to, especially with more and more patients having high deductible insurance. For example, a patient with diabetes, just for the minimum number of visits and lab work, would pay out of pocket $1,906 per year. And my practice, because I don't have the overhead associated with billing insurance, I'm able to offer that care for $775 for the same exact care per year. Patients also in my practice have access to longer visit times, same and next day visits, 24/7 cell phone access. So this I found works very well for patients who have high deductible insurance. It also works very well for patients who just need more time and access to their physician for a variety of reasons. For me, why it is important that this bill passes is really there's a huge interest in medical students. I still do some teaching at UVA. There's a huge interest in medical students who might not otherwise be interested in primary care in pursuing this model of care. And this bill passing would offer them the security to know that this is a path that they could trust, that they can move forward in. Additionally, I do have small businesses who are very interested in being able to offer this to their employees, and this bill would offer them also the security to know that that would be something that they could offer for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nicole Riley with the National Federation of Independent Business. We support this legislation because we do think that it would offer a very good option for our small business owners, particularly many of them that have had to move to high deductible plans to try to be able to afford to offer their employees insurance. We do think that if we are able to encourage more doctors to go into direct primary care, this would then increase the opportunities for them. It would provide certainties for brokers and physicians who want to offer this to small employers. Thank you.
Chairman Scott Johnson, General Counsel, Medical Society of Virginia. I'd like to associate our support with the remarks you've heard. Thank you.
Chairman Doug Easter with MD Resource, which is a network of doctors down in the Lynchburg area, and we support the bill as well. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Now, how about the opposition to the bill?
I'm Doug Gray. I'm Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Health Plans. We aren't really supportive of this concept of this bill. We think that direct primary care is fine, and if they want to practice it, they can under the current statute. This doesn't provide any great protections for the patient, and frankly, I don't think it helps the provider. I think they're better off without it. That's just our opinion. We've been willing to work with the patron and obviously the patron in the other body, and we will continue to try to get something that might get you to the point, to the finish line, because certainly this approach did in a previous incarnation.
Right.
In other words, last year.
A little bit different though, a little bit different, this year.
It's a little bit different. It's in a different code section, but it has a few things that have changed. You know, I mean, the real question is why do you need it? No one is trying to say that this is insurance. No one has brought that to the Bureau or anyone else. You know, we don't really see the necessity, but we understand how you all feel about it. Yep.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in the audience wish to be heard for or against House Bill 2053, substitute delegate plan? Okay. Have a motion to report. Have a second. All right, anyone else? Members wishing to vote by electronic voting board? We'll close the roll. House Bill 2053, report to the substitute 19-0. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Alpha.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And if you're waiting, if any members are waiting on the subcommittee, it's going to be a little while.
It's 1527, and I can't get all the interested people on board for one version, so I just asked you to lay it on the table.
Oh. We were all excited. That was my brochure bill.
That was your brochure, you want to do it?
All right. Have a motion to lay House Bill 1527 on the table. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Right.
We want to prolong my pains.
All right, House Bill 2196, which is my bill on wireless communications, that will be set for Tuesday. Trying to work some things out on that one. House Bill 2196. Now, Delegate Weber, has anyone seen Delegate Weber? Have Delegate Hugo, Subcommittee 2 has a motion to strike House Bill 1438, Delegate Ed, and 2202, Delegate Torino. So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to strike those bills. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the strikes are not on the list, okay? Delegate Klein has House Bill 2233.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2233 is similar to Delegate Weber's bill. There he is.
There he is.
House Bill 1985, which would allow the sale of health insurance plans by out-of-state providers. It's a reform measure that's been tried in other states with hopefully the repeal of the ACA coming up in the near future. What we'll see is a more deregulated marketplace that allows more choice for consumers. We want to be at the front end of that so that consumers can take advantage of it. In fact, this very legislation was offered at the federal level by the incoming Health and Human Services Secretary, Tom Price. So I hope that this will be adopted. We can be out in front on encouraging a more competitive healthcare marketplace for consumers.
Okay, you have, you and the delegate have about the same.
Sure, and I'm happy to become chief co-patron of his. He's the lower number, so I'm happy to take mine. Doesn't matter. Did he just call me old?
All right, whichever one, we'll proceed on one or the other. It doesn't matter to me. They're not really identical, I don't think. They're not really identical. No, we're not doing any foreign causes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Council's just informed me that the Bureau has made some technical proposals for technical amendments, and if he could report them in a substitute, I'd move the substitute to incorporate them.
And I guess we might have to go with his since we may have to go with his since motion, we adopt the substitute? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Key point, a foreign health insurer is licensed, Domus shall offer provide health insurance in any other state other than Virginia, right?
If they're authorized to sell in the plan in the common law.
Right. Now, you wanna tell us basically what it does?
Well, I'm happy to let council kind of lead you through the substitute if Frank wants to do that. You want to lead it through the substitute?
Mr. Chairman, the substitute makes no substantive changes. All of the changes are listed under item 10 of the impact statement prepared by the State Corporation Commission. They're all very minor and involve, most of them are like making sure you're referring to the insurer as being domiciled as well as licensed in Virginia, correcting a reference to the commissioner with the commission, replacing financial analysis with condition examiners. On page 2, deleting reference to out-of-state companies with foreign health insurers. I think they're self-explanatory from the impact statement, and
And other than that, a foreign health insurer would have to register with the State Corporation Commission, and the State Corporation Commission would have to make some determinations if they're in good financial condition and things of that nature. Is that right? I believe that's correct.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
So-
anybody in the audience wishes to speak for or against House Bill 2233 as a substitute?
Mr. Chairman, Bob Bradshaw with the Independent Insurance Agents of Virginia, speaking in opposition, frankly, to 1985 and House Bill 2233. Please know that we are a strong supporter of state regulation of insurance, and we feel that these are kind of a precursor that when things go south on cross state lines, that at some point there will be pushes for federal control of health insurance. But number one, philosophically, we believe that there is absolutely no reason that an insurer that wants to do business in Virginia would be prohibited from doing so. And in fact, time and time again, Virginia has proven to be an excellent state in which to do business, especially in the health insurance side. Crossing state lines for health insurance would, in our opinion, create a race to the bottom. Companies would seek to domicile themselves in states with the least amount of regulatory oversight, with little recourse on the part of the consumer to demand responsive insurers, if not regulated by the state. House Bill 1985, Delegate Weber's bill, specifically says that foreign health insurers don't have to include the mandated benefits. Y'all are the ones that have the control over the mandated benefits if you want to do something about the cost of insurance, and requiring state-regulated insurers to have mandated benefits and foreign insurers not to creates an inherently uncompetitive business. Both bills exempt foreign insurers from the Virginia Guarantee Fund, leaving policyholders helpless should their foreign health insurer lose the financial ability to support their health plans. This overall issue, I do encourage you to look closely at the impact statement. Yes, the substitute takes care of some of the technical concerns that the Bureau has, but it still throws the consumer, frankly, I hate to use a pun, but to the wolves. Modern Healthcare, the NAIC, Forbes, and the Fiscal Times have all talked about this issue, saying that it avoids the underlying issues of the cost of health care. Not that we're jumping up and down for joy with what's going on in the health insurance business, but this doesn't do anything to control the costs. And we urge you to, again, seriously take a look at the impact statement statement that the Bureau provided in terms of consumer protection and oppose both House Bill 1985 and House Bill 2233. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Bill Gray, no relation to Doug Gray. Especially since the Darth Vader comment. I represent the Virginia Association of Health Underwriters, or VAHU. We too have to oppose these two bills. As Mr. Bradshaw said, we do want laws and changes that will address free market and competition, and to lower the rates. We don't believe that these statutes will do that. We do have the concern about the consumer. If I were to buy a plan from out of state and my claim is denied, I guess I go to that other state and hope that someone there in the other state is going to help me with that. The lawyer in me did also wonder about agent laws, agent licensing. If you look at those statutes, which are 38.2, 1822, and 1827, that's the authority that's where the agents get licensed and the authority for them to sell plans. Those statutes specifically say they can sell plans only for the insurers who are licensed in Virginia. So I question if this bill is passed, whether agents will even be able to sell these plans from foreign insurers. So we too oppose both of the bills.
Thank you. Next. Anyone else wish to speak for or against House Bill 2233?
I'm Doug Gray, Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Health Plans. I can't help but observe with a little bit of humor that we just said that direct primary care is not insurance, and there may be some similarities to this bill. This bill is basically saying that out-of-state companies aren't insurance as far as Virginia law goes. I mean, Virginia has a huge set of statutes that regulate insurance. And so if you're interested in understanding the difference between the network of laws that we have in Virginia and what the Bureau does, you should bring the Bureau up and ask them questions. If you're not, I mean, there's no need to go about that. Bottom line is that health insurance is a volume-based business. We get a discount by bringing volume to the table. The idea that another company is going to be able to come here and get a competitive price and offer a competitive premium is, ludicrous. It's not going to happen. 5 other states have approved legislation like this to no effect. So, I mean, it's an interesting idea. It's one that is being talked at the national level, but the idea at the national level would require health insurance companies that are 3 times the size of what we have today. And that's not where we're headed in the course. So the bottom line here is this concept doesn't fit with reality. But it's an interesting concept, and it's being discussed at the national level, and that's probably where progress will be made on it. But if you want the details, I mean, there's